What's up, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer from blueandgold.com with our football analyst Tim Hyde talking about a new commitment on Wednesday, April 27th for the Fighting Irish. Boubacar Traore announced his pledge to the Fighting Irish, four-star player from Catholic Memorial in West Roxbury, Massachusetts. Pop up real quick the recruiting industry comparison page for Boubacar. Four-star player across the board. You see Rivals and ESPN have him in the 200s, and then On3 and 24/7 right there in the 80s. Pretty highly ranked prospect. And then you look at the On3 consensus on the left side of your screen, number 117 player nationally. The On3 consensus equally weighs all four of those major media companies. And that's where Traore ranks with the rest of the class. Number 117 nationally, number 15 defensive lineman. So, Tim, I want to talk a little bit about his recruitment and his offer list in a little bit. Let's just start with, let's put your Coach Hyde hat on. What do you see on this young man's film? Because we're watching. When he's in number 8, it's his junior film. And then in a minute or so, we'll see him in number 10. It's his sophomore tape. Not a ton of film out there on him. But what do you see when you're watching his highlights?
Oh, I love him. I mean, when I was just starting as a coach, for my first dozen years or so, I coached D line, and I coached a handful of, lucky enough to coach some tall, lean kids that went and played Division I football. And watching this kid, he is awesome. I mean, flat out, he really is a dynamic, talented football player. One of the things I like is right there his hands. He has amazing strike ability. What I mean by that, like he is just shooting his hands instantly to get pad level on you and dominate point of attack. And there's another thing. He plays tight end in a lot of his film. He's got a nice touchdown catch. I saw watching some film of him last night. He's a big end. I know that term's being used a lot in Notre Dame recruiting these days, the big end, the 5 technique, possible 3 technique on passing downs or vice versa. But, he's got it all. And I look at him, plays with great effort, plays with great leverage. And when I say leverage, it's gap side, arm and leg free. Whatever his gap is, he's playing in that hole. Very disciplined football player. And his hand strike is at a high, high level, and plays a great pad level. Pad level meaning low. Right there, you see him low, fit in his gap. He's a tremendous, tremendous get for Coach Washington and obviously Coach Freeman in this 2023 class.
Yeah, definitely a big-time four-star player here. Third Notre Dame defensive line commitment in the 2023 class, joining 5-star pass rush specialist Keon Keeley from Florida and Brennan Vernon, who every time I feel like I mention his name, he gains 5 pounds. Brendan Vernon, every time you see him, pictures of him on his Notre Dame visit. Brendan Vernon from Mentor, Ohio High School is a massive human being. So all highly ranked prospects. And yeah, Notre Dame could finish out the 2023 defensive line class really strong if the Irish are able to add Jason Moore from DeMatha Catholic, just outside of D.C. I know Tim is a huge fan of Jason Moore.
Huge.
Devin
Yes.
Houston, Canadian-born, now playing his ball up in Northwest Maryland. Another 4-star prospect. I mean, we could be looking at arguably, I don't want to say the best defensive line class on paper for Notre Dame, because I'm young and I don't want to speak to something that only the late, great Lou Emoji could. But you definitely think that could be up there. Tim, I want schematically, when Mike Elston was at Notre Dame, you had in the Clark Lee, in that defense, you had your Viper, your strong side end, your defensive tackle, and your nose guard. Notre Dame still has that 4-man front, under Marcus Freeman and Al Golden, by all accounts, keeping that as well. But we saw a shift last year to a lot more 3-man fronts. What did you see in Notre Dame's front last year? How did Notre Dame utilize that?
Well, they didn't have a lot of these tall, long-armed guys with amazing reach. I think they're going to. You could just see the type of bodies that they're looking at.
You
They
think
are
they're going
looking.
towards 3-man fronts?
Yes, I mean they can't. Yes, I mean they're not recruiting all these quote unquote big ends, so to speak, to all have four deep at three technique that grow into 285 pounders. I think they're getting a lot of long kids that are going to grow and be 275, 285. That could be great pass rushers. Great pass rushers. It's almost like the reverse of Coach Heastan, who recruits tackles, moves those inside. I think Freeman and Washington, especially Freeman last year with Tyson Ford, Gobira, you're getting these long guys to add weight on that are going to be C gap type football players. And one thing I noticed in the spring game and rewatching it, there's a lot of movement. They did a lot of twisting, a lot of 4-man line movement, bringing the Viper in with twists. So I think that's that Al Golden type thing where he likes to move around a lot. You've heard a bunch of that mentioned. And so I think they're getting these guys. Last year, they're a little bit stagnant with their 3-man front. They had to blitz the Mike and Will a lot to get pressure. I wouldn't be surprised if they reverse that with a lot of these tall, long, lean guys that they're recruiting. You mentioned Vernon, big guy. Keon Keeley's going to gain weight. The guy's 6'6" frame is going to go there, and then you go Boubacar. If they get Jason Moore to go in with the two with Gobira and Ford, all of a sudden you got two deep, a bunch of guys that all look the same.
Yeah, I think
Interchangeable.
it's going to be very multiple. Like I think the Keon Keeley, like yeah, he's obviously going to put on weight, but
Mhm.
they're still going to have that place for that just edge rush specialist like a Keon Keeley. Again, a 5-star prospect, number 10 player per the On3 consensus. But yeah, it seems to be shifting a lot more towards. You got to remember, Marcus Freeman. He's been here for it seems like a while because it's been a lot this past year, but it's only been what 15 months. Like he doesn't have
Yep.
his guys yet that he's recruited. So I think we're gonna see more of a 3-man front. And when I watch Boubacar Traore, it's like he's that 5-3 technique hybrid player that fits perfectly. Or if you play 4-man, he's that on that strong side defensive end. You play 3 technique. You play him on the outside of that, and yeah, you could be pretty darn good for Notre Dame.
It's going to guys that look like Khalid Kareem. That's obviously in the NFL. Isaac Rochelle, and then even going back to Stephon Tuitt, who's been a big end in the NFL. That's drafted by Pittsburgh to play that 3-4. And when you say 3-man front, you don't want to think Notre Dame going back to the old days of 3 big guys up front.
Right.
I don't think they're going to do that and sit and play a read and react 50 defense what they ran during the Te'o years, Manti Te'o. I think they're going athletic to where they're just going to attack with all these long armed, fast DNs. They're going to be a 275 pounders across the board, probably.
Yep. So that's kind of the chalk talk on Boubacar Traore. But as far as his recruitment goes, he committed to Boston College. I want to say it was August of 2020, really early. He would have been what would have been a sophomore freshman. He really young at that
Long
point.
time.
And yeah, so he was committed to the Eagles for quite some time. He's only reported 3 offers. Like I think maybe UConn and Pitt had offered, but I don't. He didn't ever put them out there.
Mhm.
Notre Dame, Boston College, and Michigan. Those were the 3. So a lot of folks who might say, "Well, I base my opinion off of a prospect based on his offer list." What do you do with Traore? Because he's got 3 offers. All the sites have him as a 4-star. So recruiting is a crapshoot. That aside, um, I mean, he decommitted from Boston College in March, and it was basically a foregone conclusion at that point that Notre Dame would end up landing him. Irish offered him last fall under former defensive line coach Mike Elston. Al Washington comes in, keeps that recruitment going very strong for Notre Dame. Hosted him on campus. I believe he got in on Tuesday, stayed until Wednesday, and committed while he was on campus. So not a big hat ceremony, flashy kind of deal for Boubacar. It was pretty straightforward and a really good get for Notre Dame. And I think it's 4 commitments within 2 weeks. So
Mhm.
recruiting heating up. Even if you throw in the Chris Smith, the Harvard defensive line transfer, and Jabran Payne, that's 6 commitments in the month of April. So very, very busy time here, Tim.
Oh yes, I mean he's loading up, and it's going to be to a point where if guys are sitting out there and floating around waiting and whatnot, I think these I mean, you keep track of the offers, the visits, and the numbers better than anyone. And this class is going to start filling up pretty quick, I think. And it's going to come down to, you going to join us or not?
Yeah.
They'll save a few for some of those late guys, but I think he's going to fill this thing up between now and probably 4th of July. It feels like, with all the visits, especially with the June recruiting that's going to take place on campus.
Yep, fun time to follow Fighting Irish football recruiting. You can do that for $1 for 1 year premium access over at blueandgold.com. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up on this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, and we will catch you next time.